Chuck Schumer yesterday on the floor of the Senate. Cut 16, go.
There are so many obstacles to legislation, and when the president can do it with his own pen, it makes no sense. Ryan, the president signing it, attaching it to things that are unacceptable. Legislation is not the way to go here when it's so easy for the president to sign it. It's an excuse.
So the president today signed it. An executive order. An executive order that requires the families to stay united. Illegal aliens coming into this country intentionally bypassing legal ports of entry, then coming into this country claiming asylum, triggering a administrative/legal process that could take a few weeks, in requiring our departments and agencies to determine if the adult is in fact the parent of the child whom they brought with them illegally or not in order to protect the child. The president has signed an executive order that they must stay together. I understand why he signed this executive order. Because of the grotesque demagogues in the media, in the Democrat Party, and in the ethnic front groups who insisted that the president do this. Now, there's two problems. One, I don't believe it's legal. Why? Because we have a court order in place that says you cannot detain minors for more than 20 days. Now, that's whether they're with their parents or not. That was the problem from the get-go. Number two, it's not enough for the left. As I told you last week and earlier this week, what they want is open borders. What they want as a solution is for these families coming here illegally, intentionally bypassing legal ports of entry, to come into the country illegally and disappear in the interior of the country. That's what the Democrats want. They haven't said it yet, but that's what they want. And so I would ask members of the media, in fact, I'll be very specific. Let's just pick on one. I would ask Jake Tapper, now that the president has signed this executive order, as Chuck Schumer insisted, as you folks in the media insisted, that he could put an end to this today. Are you happy with this solution? Are you happy with this solution? Now the families will all be detained together. Adults with children in family detention centers. The ACLU's not happy. The ACLU put out a statement. President Trump has been brought to his knees because of the lawsuit we filed on February 26th. Of course, that has nothing to do with it, but let's continue. And the ensuing public outcry. Kids should not have been separated from their parents in the first place, and they still don't belong in jail. His alleged solution to a crisis of his own making is many months too late. It is a crisis that should not have happened to begin with. He has caused irreparable damage to thousands of immigrant families. The devil's in the details, they go on. The crisis will not abate until each and every single child is reunited with his or her parent. An 11th hour executive order doesn't fix the calamitous harm done to thousands of children and their parents. This executive order would replace one crisis for another. Children don't belong in jail at all, even with their parents, under any set of circumstances. If the president thinks placing families in jail indefinitely is what people have been asking for, he's grossly mistaken. Now, that's what's going to catch on next. Okay, now the families together. But they're in these horrific concentration camps. They're in these Nazi concentration camps. They're in these Japanese internment camps. Families are together. But now we're treating them like it's Guantanamo Bay. How long are they going to be there? What's their treatment like? All of a sudden, send the reporters in. Let's see if they're getting 3 squares. Let's see if they each have a bed and clean sheets, and go on and on and on. And if not, they'll find a judge who says, release them all. Release them all. They'll say it violates the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. What does? Oh, yes, you don't understand. It says people, not citizens. I'm telling you, they're drawing up the law papers as I speak. This is the plot. This is the plan. To eviscerate any notion of a border. And they sit in their conference rooms on the 12th floor of these skyscrapers, air-conditioned, these left-wing lawyers, and they plot and they scam, they forum shop, they twist the law, they kick holes in the Constitution, and this is what they do. President signed an executive order because the media are out of control, the Democrats are out of control, Hollywood's out of control. They're all one and the same. The same hate America mindset. No responsibility to the adults who come into this country illegally rather than through the legitimate ports of entry. No accountability whatsoever. The fact that there's an increasing number of drug cartel types and pedophilia types and so forth who are dragging kids into this country and claiming them as their own, they don't even talk about that because it gets into the way of their political agenda. Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper. What's the solution to this, Jake? To let the family loose, right? Into the country. To break existing immigration laws. Isn't that the answer, Jake? Jake, who used to work for a left-wing congresswoman, Democrat from Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, Mezvinsky. Jake, who used to work for Handgun Control Inc. Jake, who's on CNN every day calling Trump a liar, going around various TV shows where he's well accepted in different social events in Washington and New York, hawking his fiction book. On TV, hawking his fiction news. What's the solution here, Jake? We all pretty much know this executive order won't be upheld. We all pretty much know a left-wing judge, 1 out of 1,000 out there somewhere, will rule that you can't keep these families in these horrific detention centers. They must be released. We all know that'll be the end of enforcement, just as we all know that we have these federal judges that allow cities and states to nullify federal immigration law. They call themselves sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. These little confederacies that are out there, using the same arguments as the Confederacy did way back when. The irony is totally lost on the press because the press has as their goal to advance an ideology. Not the news, not facts. You've seen this repeatedly during the course of this administration. You saw it unbelievably in the last week. At the White House press conference, at the media correspondence dinner, you see it every night on TV. They're agenda-driven. They're ideology-driven. And then they tell you they're there protecting freedom of the press when they're abusing it every step of the way. These are not noble people. These are not nonpartisans. These are not objective people. These are ideologues. And they go in one direction, the left. The president signed an executive order which in the end will be challenged by the likes of the ACLU and these ethnic front groups because it's not enough. They want more. They want open borders. And the Democrat Party is the vessel through which, it's the political entity through which they will get what they want. They will get what they want. And Jake Tapper sits there in his sanctimony, accusing other people of lying when he lies through his teeth. He's no newsman. He's an ideologue. Just like all the rest of them on CNN and MSNBC. Rachel Maddow crying in her hands. Tell me, ladies and gentlemen, as we were doing our research over the last several days, talking about these various instances in which the Obama administration did similar things, Tell me, ladies and gentlemen, why wasn't Rachel Maddow crying before? Where was Jake Tapper before? They were nowhere. And then when you point out that families were separated before, they call you liars, because under this president they're doing it, 100% of the way, not 80% or 50% or whatever it is. And so the President of the United States comes into office and he has choices to make. He's got this decision in the Ninth Circuit that says you can't detain these kids more than 20 days. He's got their parents or adults who are bringing them into the country coming illegally. They're not coming through the legitimate ports of entry. They claim asylum. That triggers an entire process. And so they separate the kids from the adults to figure out the situation that the adults are claiming with asylum, to make sure they're not MS-13, to make sure they're not drug cartel types, to make sure those kids weren't kidnapped, to make sure these guys aren't pedophilia, to make sure all these things. And the Trump administration is attacked. Because, you see, unlike the Obama administration, unlike the Bush administration, they make no exceptions. They apply the law legally. Equally, that is. They apply the law equally. Then they're said to be in Nazi concentration camps, these kids, and Japanese internment camps. We have to hear this from Laura Bush. We have to hear this from truly sickening people who obviously haven't looked at the black and white films of the Holocaust, of the ovens, of the mass graves, who are by inference or worse, suggesting that our men and women, very courageous, on the southern border, who are trying to do their very best and who are overwhelmed, are the equivalent of Nazi guards. The equivalent of Nazi guards. When Donald Trump calls MS-13 types animals, he's attacked. He has to defend himself. It goes on day in, day out, day in, day out. When the left calls American lawmen and women who are trying to protect this country, whether it's ICE or some of the backup organizations, the equivalent of Nazis, that's okay. Right? Jake Tapper? Is that right, Jake Tapper?